I'm Ben Meiselas from Legal AF, joined by Karen Friedman Agnifilo. New York Attorney General Letitia James just filed a very powerful motion for partial summary judgment in the at least $250 million civil fraud case against Donald Trump that was brought by the New York Attorney General's office almost a year ago. That is set to go to trial early October of 2023. So right around the corner, Karen, less than 45 days before, or right around that point where we're going to have that case go to trial. Just to remind everybody what it is that New York Attorney General Letitia James is alleging under a statute that allows New York attorney generals to bring these civil enforcement procedures against businesses that are engaged in misconduct. She is alleging that over a course of a significant period of time, but within the statute of limitations period, of course, that Donald Trump, the Trump Organization, Trump's adult children, other than Ivanka Trump, she was dismissed from the action by a decision with the New York Appellate Court division, but that all of these civil defendants and co-defendants engaged in a fraudulent valuation scheme where they inflated and deflated the value of various assets in order to gain benefits. Whether that was on their taxes, whether it was to get loans, whether it was for insurance purposes. And so the victim here, as alleged by New York Attorney General Letitia James, is the people of New York who go by the laws, who abide by the laws, while Donald Trump and the Trump Organization and the other defendants are basically ripping off the public. Now, a motion for summary judgment basically states what it is in general as a proposition is that there are no disputed facts at all, such that you don't even need to go before the jury on the issue of liability, that the liability itself is established where no reasonable jury could disagree with the findings that there is liability. So that's what New York Attorney General Letitia James is arguing here with the fraudulent valuation scheme engaged in by Trump and the Trump Organization. So the only thing left to be decided, if this were to be granted, a hearing is going to take place sometime shortly before the trial, before Justice Arthur Engoron. The only issue to be decided is damages, how much money to award. If Justice Arthur Engoron grants the motion for summary judgment. Donald Trump, and through his lawyers, also filed motions to dismiss, saying that there is no evidence to support the fraud that they committed as well. And Karen, I want to throw it to you right now to get your take on this motion for summary judgment. But basically, what New York Attorney General Letitia James is saying is, look, based on undisputed evidence, no trial is required for the court to determine that defendants, including Donald Trump, presented grossly and materially inflated asset values, and that he inflated these asset values to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars, and it's alleged in 1 year to the tune of $2.2 billion in 2014 alone. So, Karen, would love to get your take here. What do you make of this motion for partial summary judgment? What do you think the court's going to do?
I mean, first of all, this is a complete head scratcher, right? Imagine anyone who's ever applied for any kind of loan, a mortgage, for example. You have to fill out all sorts of information about your net worth and about your salary and about the value of things and your assets and liabilities. Imagine if you inflated it to the tune of $2 billion, right? And then therefore received a loan because you lied and inflated it to the tune of $2 billion. I mean, anybody else, this is so obviously criminal, civil, a lie. It's everything, right? It's so obviously bad. But somehow Donald Trump gets away with making all these arguments that, somehow he still, with a straight face, makes these ridiculous arguments, in my opinion. But what's happening right now, as you said, this case is scheduled to go to trial in October. This is, if you recall, the companion case to the Alvin Bragg Manhattan DA criminal case that was almost identical. Remember, they were the same case. They were joint investigations. This is the case that Cy Vance was investigating, and when Cy Vance, who was the prior Manhattan DA, when his term was up, and Alvin Bragg, the new DA, came in, there were some senior prosecutors who went to Alvin Bragg right away in the first few weeks of his administration and said, "Hey, we're ready to indict Donald Trump, the former president." And he said, "Hold on. Press pause, slow down. I want to learn more about the case, and I want more evidence in the case." And the two prosecutors resigned quite noisily, and that case was put on pause. And Alvin Bragg said it was on pause. And then the Stormy Daniels case matured because the statute of limitations was running in that case. So Alvin Bragg went with that one while this one was still open. This case, and the only reason I bring it up was I was reminded when reading about these are dueling motions for summary judgment, by the way. It's not just Letitia James, the Attorney General, submitting one, but Donald Trump also submitted a summary judgment motion. I was reminded this is the case that when Alvin Bragg said, "I want more evidence," I'm pressing pause because I want more evidence, I don't have enough. I'm reminded about his master chess move that Alvin Bragg, the DA, did, because everybody thought he was chicken. Why is he not bringing this case? And we all forgot that Alvin Bragg, he grew up in the Attorney General's office. That's where he worked. He was an assistant attorney general for decades, and he knows how things work there. And he knew that Donald Trump would have to sit for a deposition in that case, which he ultimately did. The first time he sat for a deposition, he took the fifth, but then he ultimately sat for a deposition later and answered questions for something like 7 hours. So Alvin Bragg got all that testimony, and now he has more information should he want to bring that case. Anyway, but the civil case continued and continues. And so what Tish James did, as you said, is she submitted a motion for summary judgment, basically saying there's no dispute in fact. The numbers are what the numbers are, right? And that he inflated his assets, as you said, up to $2 billion 1 year. And, that he lied over and over and over again about the value of the assets. At one point, she wrote in her filing that he said that the worth of Trump Tower was calculated in 2018. He overvalued it by nearly $175 million. And then the next year, in 2019, the value of the building was somehow boosted to nearly $323 million. So, by nearly $323 million. So even more so, he just would make up numbers. And so she's saying there's no dispute in fact, and you should just basically motion for summary judgment, grant me that, here, and let's just narrow the case since there's no dispute in fact. But the Trump lawyers also did a summary judgment motion. And what they said was, look, this case, Judge, should be extremely narrowed for two reasons. Number one, there was this court case, the appellate court recently, that dismissed the entire case against Ivanka Trump, if you remember, saying the statute of limitations had run on her. And the appellate court remanded the matter back down to state court to Judge Arthur Engoron to recalculate the statute of limitations for anything that occurred after 2014. So anything before that would be beyond the statute. And so what Trump was saying is, look, all these things that Tish James is citing to, those were all before 2014. So all of that should be taken out of the case, should be excluded, and the case should be significantly narrowed. And then when you look at what's left, Judge, you'll see that we have depositions from people who say, Trump paid us every dime he owed us. We all made boatloads of money from him. He paid all his bills on time. And so there was nobody harmed here. So that's what he's arguing. But, I think at the end of the day, to answer your question, Tish James is going to win this trial and win this summary judgment motion potentially as well, because you can't just say, oh, no harm, no foul. That's not what the law is, right? The Attorney General, she's made this very clear. It's the New York well, she represents New York State, and New York State has a significant interest in making sure that the business records of New York State and the financial records of New York State are accurate. You can't just make stuff up so that you can, and then say, oh, but it was a good business deal later. So what would happen if they lost money? So if they lost money, they'd be chomping at the bit to say, look, he lied to us and now we lost all this money, Deutsche Bank and all the other lenders who are now saying, oh, but we don't mind because we made money and so it's fine. So, you absolutely can't do that. It's illegal. That doesn't fly in New York. And I think that he is finally going to have his comeuppance, in this particular case, but hopefully in this motion, and that it gets significantly narrowed, because this is just ridiculous. And then he'll be prevented from doing business in New York State again.
I'll give people watching this just an easy example of, you may say, well, how is it that in a complex financial case, there could be undisputed facts such that a jury isn't even needed? This is just one of the tabs that we could go through. This is over 100 pages. But let me just show you one right here. This is a tab right here that talks about the value of the triplex that Trump lives in if it was 30,000 square feet, and it lists the various years, 180 million, 200 million, 200 million, 327 million, 327 million. But it's not 30,000 square feet. It's 10,996 square feet. That's undisputed. So if you take away the fact that Donald Trump lies and you correct it and say, okay, it's actually 10,996 square feet, even if you use the numbers that Trump used to get 30,000, it's just basically a simple division problem. It's not complicated math here, Judge. Basically just divide it by 3 and you'll find what the real value is, and you'll find what the inflated amount was. And then based on these inflated amounts of 114 million, 126 million, 207 million, and 207 million, Donald Trump is then able to take unfair advantages in the market. Even if he pays back the loans to the bankers, that's not really the issue here, right? It's not like you can go to a bank, rob it. Say you rob $1 million from a bank. You don't get caught, right? Then you take your $1 million and you invest it in a stock, and the stock goes up. And so now you have $5 million. And you go to the bank, hey, I robbed you, but now I'm going to give you back $1 million and $2 million. See, aren't you happy? There's still a crime that's being committed there. And it's a little bit of a different of an example when we're talking about this kind of white collar crime. But most people, 99% of people who don't interact the way Trump does in businesses, they pay their normal taxes, they accurately report things, and they're not ripping off the system. And so that's at its core what New York Attorney General Letitia James is going to say. And I think there is going to be a lot of these things that partially summary judgment will be granted. Karen, I do think that based on the Court of Appeals decision, things that are outside the statute of limitations will be dismissed. So you'll have a narrower case. But even if you're talking about a narrower case, you're still talking about billions of dollars that are potentially in play here for damages. So a hearing is going to take place on these dueling summary judgment motions. We'll see what Justice Arthur Engoron does, but that's the status of where we're at now. And then, yeah, the motion just goes through all of the various properties. The same way I showed you the triplex, it goes through all of the, the different properties from the triplex to Seven Springs to the golf courses, so on and so forth. So we'll keep you updated when we learn more. But that's what we got for now. I'm Ben Meiselas, joined by Karen Friedman, Agnifilo. Everybody, make sure you subscribe to Legal AF wherever you get audio podcasts. Subscribe to Legal AF as well, and check out MeidasTouch.com. And have a great day.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram @MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.